So, Borderlands 2 is generally the most looked up upon Borderlands game in the entire series, but was it really that good? Or are we simply blinded by the nostalgia, which is Handsome Jack and pearlescent weapons that really weren't that good in the first place? Well, in today's video, I did want to talk about that, on top of a few other things that Borderlands 2 has done. Now, I will be ignoring the fact that with the Tiny Tina's Wonderlands ad promotion that they did about a month ago, kind of broke the entire Borderlands series, and it's still not really fixed. A lot of missions are suddenly bugged, and everyone's keybinds and settings got reverted. Good one. You know, I didn't really know that you could break a game that's almost 10 years old, so I guess that's another accomplishment. And now I do want to point out one of the big negatives of Borderlands 2 that kind of shifted Borderlands 2 in a more negative light for me, and that was simply OP10. Yeah, I'm gonna say right off the bat, I hated it with a burning passion. Actually, I hated the entire Commander Lilith DLC for raising the level to 80 and then making me do more OP levels. Prior to this, I didn't really have much issues with Borderlands 2. I didn't like OP8 in general. I actually did like Digistruct Peak, but the OP levels were very monotonous. In my humbled opinion, I do believe that level caps in Borderlands are kind of just eh. I'm not really a huge fan of them, and I'm not really a huge fan of re-farming gear, and re-farming gear every few OP levels was not fun in any way, in my opinion. I hated having to farm a Herald, waiting to around OP5, then my gear sucked, so I farmed the exact same gear set for my build just to push to the final OP level, but then I couldn't do raid bosses, so I gotta get that exact same gear set again just to farm a freaking raid boss, and it was so annoying. It was so obnoxious doing that cycle over and over for every single freaking character, man. It got very annoying, but there did become a point where it was like, okay, I'm used to it. I play the game for a few thousand hours, whatever. But that's for the people that played a few thousand hours that are used to it. If you're a casual player, you don't really want to do that over and over, and I think a lot of people didn't really enjoy it. And when it came to the end game, level 50 for Borderlands 2 felt like one of the best spots for the game, in my opinion. It felt like you had a lot of build diversity at that point, and it felt fun too. It had like the best of both worlds, and I think it really started to kind of mess up from the 61 to 72 jump. That's when you really start to notice, oh, I gotta use this gun, I gotta use that class mod, or I'm not doing the right damage, and then slag, and then constant health regeneration in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode. And that's another thing, slag inherently isn't a bad element. Heck, I actually kind of like slag, don't hate me, but slag was pretty damn fun. I'm not gonna lie to you, it was probably one of my favorite things of Borderlands 2, and I know I might get hate for that, but I enjoyed using an element that promoted more damage. I just didn't like the fact that you had to rely on that element to even play the game. And I think that's where the disconnect was, because if it was there as a option to use for more damage, a lot more people would be okay with it, but the fact that it's needed to do damage kind of separated a lot of builds and forced you to use certain things over what you deemed fun and enjoyable for you as the player. But I think all that aside, the major downfalls of Borderlands 2 don't really fall on the game itself. It kind of falls on the balancing. And the Borderlands series has always struggled with this, kind of just increasing levels and making things feel fresh and different, when really it's kind of just limiting the meta of what the player is allowed to accomplish. And that was a big issue with Borderlands 2, because early on it was so fun to try out different builds and try out different things, but there came a point where it was just so cookie cutter, especially on OP10. That is, I don't even play on OP10 anymore. As somebody who has loved Borderlands 2 for so long, I could not stomach OP10 at all. It feels like every other enemy is a walking sponge. I have to use Sandhawk B shield Maya with a Catcom, and it's just old. I enjoy fun builds in the Borderlands series, and OP10 just ignored any form of build diversity. Effervescent weapons were cool with the Commander Lilith DLC, don't get me wrong. I loved seeing a new rarity, and the Commander Lilith DLC was done pretty damn well. I don't have any complaints. There was good story, a mix of good dialogue connecting into tales from the Borderlands, and I loved it. But once again, the strengths of Borderlands 2 was the game itself, and the balancing was the downfall of it. And that's simply put the issue with Borderlands 2. If Borderlands 2 got its scaling together, I believe it would be the best game in the series, hands down, if the scaling was done properly. Granted, modders have done this themselves, and maybe that's why a large portion of the PC community believes Borderlands 2 is just so much better than Borderlands 3, because they have that accessibility to the mods that fix the issues that Borderlands 2 has, does, and then it looks like a perfect game. Because in all honesty, when you eliminate the 3 playthroughs that are required, OP levels over and over again, refarming your gear for the same exact things, this game is damn near perfect as a looter shooter. A lot of endgame content, a lot of variety, and that's another thing. A lot of people are going to say, well, a lot of the content that's endgame is only once per character. Well, a lot of modders on PC fixed that issue and made the endgame more replayable by just clicking on an NPC. So like I said, the large portion of the community that plays on PC that is on Borderlands 2 that has the accessibility to these mods just believes that this game is perfect, because debatably it can be with enough mods and enough love and support. But the console players, they don't really have the same outlook. They have the vanilla version of Borderlands. They have vanilla, this is what you get, it ain't getting mods, it's not getting updates. So when you look at it from a console player's perspective, Borderlands 2 has so many more flaws. It has issues with just general progression bugs, update bugs, things that PC players can't just fix with a few clicks of a button and install a mod or two. So generally, yes, I will say that Borderlands 2 was a great game. It revolutionized the looter shooter space as a whole, considering it came out in 2012 and it had so much of an impact. But the game honestly set the foundation for the Borderlands series. Even Borderlands 1 wasn't really as impactful on spreading the Borderlands name out there, but Borderlands 2 certainly was. And I do think even if Borderlands 2 wasn't perfect, because it really wasn't in the vanilla eyes of things, it definitely laid the groundwork and foundation for the next Borderlands games to be better, which is weird because the next Borderlands games didn't entirely listen to the feedback, but they did in a lot of ways. No more 900 playthroughs to get to the end game, slag reliance, replayable slaughter shafts, replayable DLCs, reset your playthroughs. But in the grand scheme of things, I do believe a lot of the nostalgia kind of does overshadow the flaws that Borderlands 2 does have. Yes, it's a great game. It's a fucking fantastic game. It's probably one of the best Borderlands games. Honestly, on my personal list, I think it's the best Borderlands game to this day, but we can't let that ignore the fact that Borderlands 2 has some bumps, and it definitely has some plot holes. It definitely has some issues, right? And I just want to make this video to kind of point that out. Borderlands 2 did a lot of things great, but it also did a lot of things pretty bad, and we all know this. If you're a longtime Borderlands fan, either you hate people saying Borderlands 2 is perfect, or you hear Borderlands 2 is the best and you cheer because you're not wrong. I mean, if we're talking about storyline, I don't think any other Borderlands has them beat, because Borderlands 1 story was very choppy, and we're not going to talk about Borderlands 3. God Queen, Tyreen. And yes, I do get nostalgia as a factor. Handsome Jack's awesome. The story writing was pretty amazing. The characters were great, and we kind of fell off with that in the recent Borderlands titles, including Wonderlands. We kind of got Borderlands 3, new characters introduced, a sexier Moxie. I don't think anyone complained about that. And then we got Wonderlands with the same characters, reskinned with the same voice actors, similar dialogue, and it kind of left a weird taste in our mouth. So we kind of look back on Borderlands 2 as the brighter days and the days where it felt more real. So, but if you want to know more about my comparison to Borderlands 2 and 3, I did make a video on the channel, or you can click on the top right about now. Check that out. I hope you guys did enjoy today's video, and if you did, make sure you guys leave a like on it, as it helps me out a lot and spreads my Borderlands content more out to the Borderlands community. And make sure you guys subscribe so you never miss out on another video from me. Wish you have a terrific day, stay safe, and I will see you guys later.